Hello everybody and welcome to the Hylian Hero Rebirth, Reboot thing, majiggy thing. There we go, that's a good intro for this video. I'm Matt and welcome to the Hylian Hero. This is a channel where I'm going to play through every single Legend of Zelda game. And of course to do that we need to look at the timeline, which was just animated in. And that loft wing flying across means one thing: the first game is Skyward Sword, which is what I'm going to be starting to play soon. Forget all the other stuff I've done on the channel. Forget the first playthrough where I did 7 episodes and didn't finish it. I'm going to actually do it this time properly. It's going to be a little bit more edited down. It's going to be a little bit more, I don't know, enjoyable. Because I feel like 7 episodes in before the first temple, even though the first part of that game is kind of a drag, it needs kind of a bit more of a pace to be picked up. So I'm going to edit a little bit more. I'm going to make it a little bit more concise, keep it more linear to the story. None of these playthroughs are probably going to be 100% playthroughs. They're going to be about the story of Zelda, about the characters and things like that. I may give myself challenges on some of the games I'm more familiar with. Anyway, let's move on. The next game in the timeline is the Minish Cap. Now, the Minish Cap was a GBA game that I don't think I've even ever finished. Or if I have, I was a very, very younger person when I first played it. So yeah, I enjoyed it when I played it. It's got the shrinking mechanic where you kind of go down to the size of the Minish, with which of these guys kind of, living around in Hyrule. I don't know if it establishes itself as such an early game. I do remember that people, before Skyward Sword came out, thought of this game as the first in the timeline, which technically it was. But again, I don't know too much about the lore in that game, so I'm kind of excited to get onto that. And that is quickly followed up by Four Swords, which follows on from the bad guy of the Minish Cap, Vati. And, he comes back, and it's kind of a multiplayer game, but they've re-released it as a single-player game, and I don't think I've ever played it as the single-player variant. I remember testing out the multiplayer stuff a long time ago. Anyway, let's move on to my favorite game of all time, Ocarina of Time. This game, to me, is just superb in every way. I love it. I don't really want to say anything more than that. I'm probably going to play the 3D version, if I can get the whole 3DS thing figured out. I'm still working on that. But by the time I get there, once Skyward Sword, Minish Cap, Four Swords, everything will be figured out. So, anyway, let's move on. In the order of things, I'm going to go to the adult timeline, which is at the end of Ocarina of Time, you are sent back by Princess Zelda to be a child, and then Majora's Mask carries on, and so on and so on. But I want to go in that adult era where Zelda is still there, but there's no hero. The hero got sent back, and he doesn't exist anymore in this timeline. So this is the adult timeline, and obviously the first game in this timeline is Wind Waker. Without a hero, the land was flooded, so Wind Waker takes place above Hyrule. You're on your boat, you're sailing around, doing cool things. It's pretty awesome. I love Wind Waker, it's great. That is then quickly followed up by Phantom Hourglass, which is like a direct sequel. It's a DS game. I don't remember much about it. Definitely finished it and its own sequel, but I don't really remember much about them. Talking about its own sequel, that is Spirit Tracks. It's a very technical, not technology game, because trains are everywhere. Like Hyrule, this new land of Hyrule is going through like this already kind of like steam engine kind of industrial revolution. It's kind of cool. Still a lot of medieval elements in there. And that is the adult era timeline. It's a pretty small one, but so is the child era, which we're moving to now. So the child era is an interesting one because it follows up directly after Ocarina of Time, when you've just been sent back in time and Navi floats off up to the window in the Temple of Time after you've put the Master Sword back and you're back as a child. So you go in search for Navi and crazy stuff happens. If you haven't played or seen much of Majora's Mask, it is an insanely cool Zelda game. And again, I'm hopefully going to play the 3D version of this. There's so many improvements in the 3DS version of this that I really want to play that version. I actually 100%ed it on my first playthrough. I had done it previously on the N64 version. So the only time I've ever played it on 3DS, I 100%ed it and it was perfect. I absolutely love this game. It's great in like every single way. And weirdly enough, kind of in the timeline of things, the next game is Twilight Princess. Now, I suppose that links into the whole idea of, the sage dude. What's his name? So he's also known as the Hero Shared when he's in kind of his human Stalfos form. And that is meant to actually be the hero from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, just, you know, aged up, got lost in the Lost Woods and turned into a Stalfos, I guess. Really cool connection, really like it. Twilight Princess is a great game. Looking forward to going back to that. That'll be the Wii U HD version, most likely. And then, following that is, of course, Four Swords Adventures. I said of course, maybe people didn't know that. So Four Swords Adventures is like another one of the Four Swords games, but it takes place here, which is kind of strange. But it's again multiplayer-ish. It's got a lot of the same mechanics as Four Swords. Four Swords? Yeah, up near below Minish Cap. And that is the Child era. Now, that doesn't seem like too many games. There's a lot of new stuff in there, a lot of 3D games in there, but we're missing a lot of the 2D games, a lot of the sprite-based games, because the only one really in there that's sprite-based and, you know, I suppose, you know, classic-looking is Minish Cap, even though it and all the others are still kind of using that new Wind Waker-ish, you know, kind of art style that things like, you know, Four Swords uses, and obviously Wind Waker and its sequels. So let's head over to the Downfall timeline, as I call it. So I believe this is actually called the Heroes Defeated timeline, but Decline, Downfall, whatever you want to call it. So this is when you fail killing Ganon or Ganondorf at the end of Ocarina of Time. This gets created, which is really interesting. So it starts off with A Link to the Past. Some people's favorite Zelda game. It is amazing, a really good 2D game. Absolutely love it. Looking forward to revisiting that and playing that with you guys. Following that up directly-ish is Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. Now these are two different games but very similar, and I don't quite know how I'm gonna play those yet. They also were released in a very similar fashion to like Pokemon. They both came out at like the same time, and I remember getting them both. I think it was from like a PC World or something like that, when on like really near when they were released. I was very young and playing on my Game Boy Color, so it will be really fun to revisit those. That is followed up by Link's Awakening, another classic Game Boy. Yeah, it was on Game Boy, wasn't it? Yeah, wow. Another Game Boy Zelda game. Really good as well. Don't remember anything about it. I remember a beach with a bunch of Oxra rocks that really annoyed me, and a well. Maybe that does mean I remember stuff around it. Anyway, we'll revisit that. Following that up is A Link Between Worlds, which shares its world with A Link to the Past. This is a much more updated world though, and it takes place a little bit after it. Obviously all this other stuff has happened, and it's on the 3DS, and it looks great, plays great. I love A Link Between Worlds. Following that up is the multiplayer-based Triforce Heroes, which is going to be an interesting one to play. I will just be playing it single player, but depending on how I go about the 3DS stuff, maybe we'll do some multiplayer stuff on that. It is an interesting one. Let's move on to the very first Legend of Zelda. I kind of feel like it's fitting that the last two games I'll be playing in the timeline are The Legend of Zelda and Adventure of Link, which is Zelda 2. Very cool games. I don't probably have to say much about them because they are kind of classics, and yeah, they're going to be interesting to play because they're really difficult games. Like, compared to the newer stuff, they are really hard games. So when I set out to make this video, I didn't plan on making it 10 minutes long, so apologies for that. This was meant to just be kind of like an announcement video to tell you guys that this has been kind of rebooted. This channel is coming back in a different way. It is going to be the timeline idea from the first kind of a go at doing this in 2013. But, you know, redesigned. We've got the new titles, new logos, all the cool animation. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed that for the timeline. And overall, I'm just really happy to be doing Zelda again. I really just want to play through it. Hopefully it will keep me interested. Skyward Sword can be a little bit of a slog, so I'm just going to keep fighting through it for as long as I possibly can. And I want to thank you guys who have decided to watch this. Oh, what's that? There's 2 views. 2 people who watched this. Thank you very much. And I will, you know, endeavor to do more, you know, cool things like outros and intros on all of the videos coming forth. I'm hoping to get Skyward Sword out pretty soon. I want to kind of get the ball rolling on that really quickly to dive in. It's going to be played all on PC, on an emulator Dolphin, so it's going to look really crisp, really clean. I've been testing that, and I can run it like pretty high res with like solid frame rates and everything. I just need to test some more recordings and stuff with that, and it's going to be pretty cool. I am pretty excited to return back to the world of The Legend of Zelda and play through all these games, and maybe do some wicked, interesting challenges along the way. So, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!